My name is James, and for as long as I could remember, life in Moscow had been a steady hum of hard work. Every morning, the gray light would filter through the thin curtains of my small apartment, a signal that another day of pushing, lifting, and building was about to begin. I worked at a construction site, hauling steel beams and mixing cement. The pay was enough to keep a roof over my head and a few kopecks for simple food, but barely. My hands were calloused, my back often a dull ache, but I believed in the honest sweat of labor. I dreamed of a day when I wouldn't have to count every ruble, when I could maybe buy a proper meal without guilt, or even one day visit the Black Sea coast I'd only ever seen in postcards. But those were distant, shimmering dreams. Most days, my quiet struggle was just about making it to the next paycheck. The biggest shadow hanging over my life, however, wasn't just my own financial strain. It was my mother. She lived far away in a small village and had been unwell for months. Her medical bills were a constant, heavy weight in my chest, a tightening knot of worry that never truly loosened. I felt a deep, piercing doubt that I was failing her, that I wasn't strong enough or capable enough to give her the care she deserved. This fear, this internal nemesis, gnawed at me every single day. It whispered that I was trapped, that I would never escape this cycle of barely making ends meet. I tried everything to improve our situation. I took on every extra shift offered, even when my body screamed for rest, often working 12 or 14 hours straight. I started walking to and from work, sometimes over an hour each way, just to save the bus fare. My meals became even simpler: bread, potatoes, sometimes a boiled egg, never meat. My heavy winter coat, a gift from my father years ago, was patched in several places, but I wore it every single day, cherishing its warmth as my last luxury. It was my shield against the biting Moscow winter. There were so many times I saw others struggling, maybe an old woman trying to carry heavy bags or a homeless man shivering on a bench, and a pang of empathy would go through me. I wished I could help, but the truth was, I felt like I was drowning myself. Then the setbacks started piling up. First, there was a sudden slowdown at the construction site, meaning fewer hours and less pay. My already tight budget became a desperate stretch. Then a call from my mother's doctor. Her condition had worsened, requiring new, more expensive medication and additional tests. The numbers they quoted made my stomach clench. I tried to stay positive, to believe I could find a way, but hope felt like a thin sheet of ice cracking under my feet. The winter descended fiercely that year, colder than usual. My small apartment with its drafty windows struggled to hold heat, and my heating bill soared, further eating into my meager savings. One particularly brutal evening, after a full day of work followed by a humiliating attempt to find a second job that led nowhere, I came home to a notice taped to my door. My rent was overdue. The landlord was threatening eviction. I sank onto my worn couch, the cold seeping into my bones, and stared at the flickering streetlights outside. The numbers in my head were a tangled mess, and for the first time I truly felt like giving up. All my efforts, all my sacrifices seemed to have been for nothing. I had failed my mother, and now it seemed I was about to fail myself, losing even the small comfort of my home. My spirit was utterly broken. The cold outside was nothing compared to the chill in my heart. It was later that same night, the air so cold it felt like needles in my lungs, that everything changed. The wind howled through the narrow streets, whipping snow into swirling patterns. I had nowhere else to go, so I decided to take the long bus ride across the city to clear my head, to simply exist away from the empty silence of my apartment. I stood at a nearly deserted bus stop, my hands jammed deep into the pockets of my heavy, patched coat, the only true warmth I possessed. I watched my breath turn to mist, feeling the heavy burden of my despair. Just then I noticed a small figure huddled on the bench, shivering violently. It was a child, no older than 8 or 9, his thin jacket completely inadequate for the brutal cold. His lips were blue, his teeth chattering uncontrollably, and he looked utterly lost and terrified. My first instinct, selfish as it sounds, was to pull my own coat tighter. I was freezing too, and this coat was my last defense. But then I looked at his eyes, wide with fear and cold, and a deeper, stronger instinct took over. The thought of that little boy getting sick, or worse, out here alone in the freezing night, was unbearable. Without another thought, without even giving myself a chance to hesitate, I began to unbutton my coat. It was a struggle with stiff, cold fingers, but I pulled it off, feeling the immediate, shocking bite of the Arctic air against my shirt. I walked over to the child and, without a word, wrapped my heavy coat around his small shoulders, pulling it tight. The coat swallowed him whole, but I could see a faint glimmer of warmth return to his eyes. He looked up at me, bewildered but grateful. A moment later, a kind voice spoke from behind me. "That was a truly good thing you did, young man." I turned to see an older woman, elegantly dressed, her eyes soft with emotion. She had clearly been watching. Before I could stammer a reply, she continued, My car is just around the corner. I heard a radio report about a lost child in this area. Perhaps you and the boy would like a ride somewhere warm while we wait for the authorities or his parents." I nodded, still numb from the cold but a strange warmth spreading through me. We helped the little boy into her warm car, and she quickly found his frantic parents nearby. They were overwhelmed with relief and gratitude, embracing their son and thanking me profusely. But the woman, whose name I learned was Elena, didn't let me go. She insisted on driving me home, and during the ride she asked about my day, about my life. I found myself telling her everything, the struggles with my mother, the financial despair, the eviction notice. She listened without judgment, a rare and comforting presence. When we arrived at my apartment, she didn't just drop me off. She reached into her purse and pulled out a card, not with money, but with a phone number. "My son owns a construction company," she said, her voice gentle. "He's looking for reliable, honest workers. Call him tomorrow, James. Tell him Elena sent you. And here," she added, pressing a thick envelope into my hand, "this is not charity. This is a small token of gratitude for your incredible kindness tonight. Please take it." I protested, but she insisted. The money inside was enough to pay my overdue rent and buy some urgently needed groceries. More importantly, it bought me time to make that call. The very next day, I called Elena's son. The job he offered was stable, the pay fair, and the company valued its employees. It was the turning point I desperately needed. With steady work and a reliable income, I was able to manage my mother's medical bills, and slowly her health began to improve. I was even able to visit her, something I hadn't thought possible. My apartment felt warmer, my meals more substantial, and the constant knot of fear in my chest finally began to loosen. My new normal wasn't a life of luxury, but it was a life of stability and, most importantly, hope. The heavy burden of doubt had lifted. I learned to trust in the unexpected kindness of strangers and in the quiet strength of my own heart. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping out with odd jobs and offering support to others who were struggling. I remembered the feeling of that coat leaving my body, the immediate chill, followed by the deep, profound warmth of doing something good. That feeling became my compass. Every week, I set aside a small portion of my paycheck to donate to organizations that helped children and families in need. I wanted to pay forward the kindness that had saved me. Years later, I was waiting at that very same bus stop, on my way to a new volunteer project I was helping to organize for at-risk youth. The winter air was still crisp, but it no longer felt quite so cruel. A young man, probably 17 or 18, stood nearby, bundled in a sturdy, heavy winter coat, chatting animatedly with a friend. He caught my eye, and for a fleeting moment, something about his face, a spark of resilience, made me pause. He offered a polite nod, and I returned it, a smile touching my lips. As he turned to leave with his friend, I overheard him say, "Yeah, I remember one time when I was little I got separated from my parents at this very bus stop. It was freezing. A man, a complete stranger, gave me his coat. It was the kindest thing anyone ever did for me. It showed me that even when things are really bad, there's always good in the world, always hope. That's why I always try to help others now, you know?" My heart swelled. A warmth spread through me, deeper than any coat could provide. I knew then, with absolute certainty, that even the smallest act of kindness truly can ripple outwards, changing lives in ways we might never fully see. Things truly do get better, sometimes because of our own resilience, but often because of the unexpected kindness of a complete stranger.